Alright guys, BLM here, we're back with a new video. In this video we'll be talking about American Ninja Warrior Season 2. Obviously I already did a video like this for American Ninja Warrior Season 1, so this will act as kind of a continuation of that video. So there's a lot to talk about here, so let's just get straight into it. So before we really start talking about this season, I'm going to talk about something that happened in between ANW's 1 and 2. So during this time, two Sasuke tournaments passed, being Sasuke's 24 and 25. And for Sasuke 25, the three Americans that cleared stage 1 in Sasuke 23 were allowed to come back and compete in Sasuke 25, that being Rich King, Brian Orozco, and Levi Muhlenberg. And this being the tournament directly after Yuji Urushihara's Kanzen Seiha in Sasuke 24, the course was completely redesigned. And due to a random draw for starting positions, Levi Muhlenberg was the first to run, where he was initially disqualified for using his hands on the very first obstacle, the dome steps, but this rule was not told to him, so he was given a rerun, and he was able to clear the course, as well as Brian, though Rich King surprisingly failed at the log grip. On stage 2, Levi once again failed the first obstacle of stage 2 here, the slider drop, after not realizing that the bar could fall off the track. And this made Brian the last American standing, where he was actually able to finally clear stage 2, even though he did it in a super slow pace. Now, even though he was able to clear stage 2, he did fail the second obstacle of stage 3, which was a new obstacle called the Doorknob Grasper. So, now with that context out of the way, let's get into ANW 2. Like American Ninja Warrior Season 1, ANW 2 here was a qualifier for the original show Sasuke, with this tournament being the American qualifier for Sasuke 26. This did air on G4 as a series of half-hour episodes, but this time we had different hosts from Season 1. Here we added in Matt Eisman and Jimmy Smith to replace Blair Herter, while Allison Hayslip stayed on as the sideline reporter. Matt Eisman has obviously stayed on the show ever since, while Jimmy Smith stayed on until Season 3. And these two, while not perfect in this season, are a massive improvement over Blair Herter, who is always really boring and really stilted during all of his commentary. And from a production standpoint, pretty much everything here is better than ANW 1. The show is better edited, and again, the host just brought a new level of professionalism to the commentary of the season. Now, also like ANW 1, there were not 5 or 6 qualifying courses like there are today. There was only one in LA. But this time, instead of being filmed in a parking lot, it was filmed on Venice Beach, which is where the LA qualifier would be filmed until ANW 7. Another change here is that ANW 2 was the first season to have prize money, where if an American got total victory in Sasuke 26, they would win $250,000. But with this inclusion of the prize money also came the rule where only one person will be awarded money even if there are multiple winners. And obviously this will have a major impact in the future season. There are some other changes to this season, but we'll talk about them when we get there. So let's get started by talking about the qualifying round, which worked the exact same way it did in ANW 1. Where there are 6 obstacles without a time limit, and then the top 30 would move on to the semifinals. The course itself started with the quad steps, which were a modified version of the quintuple steps from ANW 1, where one step was taken out and the distance between each step was made bigger. And again, this or the quintuple steps would be the first obstacle of the qualifying course until the ANW 7. The rope swing from ANW 1 did return here, and it's just a rope that you swing to another platform. And while it did some major damage in ANW 1, it didn't do nearly as much damage here in ANW 2. Next obstacle was the big one, and that is the Bridge of Blades. This obstacle was inspired by the cross bridge from Sasuke, but was made much more difficult by instead of having the bridge in an X shape, this bridge was in a plus sign shape, which made the obstacle exponentially more difficult, as it took more speed to get through the obstacle than the original version. And this was really the big ninja killer of this round, and had some pretty surprising fails here. The next obstacle was the spider jump, which was just the spider wall from ANW 1, but they changed the wood to plexiglass like it should have been to begin with, so yeah. Fifth obstacle was the jumping bars, which replaced the pipe slider, and the jumping bars were on ANW 1, however they were on the back half of the course. They moved it up to the 5th obstacle here. And finally we have the warped wall, which was actually a warped wall. Last time it was just a half pipe, now they actually built an actual warped wall. Instead of 5 tries to get up it like in ANW 1, they only had 3 tries in this tournament, which again is the way it works nowadays. And just like ANW 1, we had well over 30 clears, so the top 30 ended up being anyone that cleared within a minute and 6 seconds. Now for some notable runs that didn't make the semifinals. As I stated before, the Bridge of Blades were the big ninja killer of the course. They eliminated Brett Sims, Brian Kretsch, and then 2 of the finalists from ANW1 in Rick Huelga, and even more surprisingly, Paul Darnell. Now, while they weren't shown on the show, it is known that these were the debut tournaments of Jamie Ron and James McGrath, who both surprisingly failed at the quad steps. Then we got Rousselis Perry from ANC2 and ANW1, who got disqualified on the spider wall after accidentally grabbing the top of the wall with his hands. And the final round I'm going to mention here is that this was also the debut tournament of Mike Bernardo, who did make it to the warped wall, but couldn't get up it. Now for the notable names that did make it to the semifinals. All 5 that were eliminated in the finals of ANW1 made it through here in Andrew Carson, Sean Morris, Ryan Cousins, ANC4 winner David Campbell, and ANW1 top qualifier William Spencer. Now, some other people from ANW1 that didn't make it to the finals last time but did make it to the semifinals this time are Lauren Ball, Ryan Stratus, and Dorian Cedars. With obviously Lauren Ball and Ryan Stratus being bigger names today, they're 2 of only 4 people who have competed in every tournament. And then some returnees that made it to Japan in ANW1 also made it through in Shane Daniels, Kane Sinclair, and Travis Furlanick, who all failed stage 1 last time. And then all 3 that cleared stage 1 last time in Rich King, Brian Roscoe, and Levi Muhlenberg also made it through as well. In this tournament though, we also had a really impressive group of newbies that made it through, with some of them being pretty big names today. I mean, this is the debut of Brett Stephenson, Evan Dollard, Chris Wilczewski, Travis Rosen, Paul Casimir, all of which made pretty impressive debuts here. But the 2 fastest times of the day came from 2 lesser-known newbies in David Money and Trevor Vaughn. While David Money did come in second, he did have the fastest pace in qualifying, but he did mess up on the warp wall, which led to him clearing in a time of 40 seconds. While Trevor Vaughn came in first with a time of 39 seconds. But yeah, that's everything about the qualifying. Let's move on to the semifinals, where the first 6 obstacles were exactly the same, but 3 more obstacles were added to the end of the course. And here, the top 15 moved on, which again is a similar format to what happens today. The 3 new obstacles here included a current staple now in the salmon ladder, which was directly after the warp wall, which obviously this was an obstacle taken from Sasuke, but it was a bit modified here where the competitors had to jump on a trampoline to get to the obstacle, which did trip some people up. And then the salmon ladder itself was built a bit differently than the Sasuke version, where the bar was on a pulley system for safety reasons, and then the rungs were made out of different material, which made the bar easier to disrail. And this was a true ninja killer, eliminating over half the people that attempted it, with this semifinal round being the first time in American Ninja Warrior history where people moved on without clearing the course, as 4 people that failed the salmon ladder ended up moving on to the finals. Directly after the salmon ladder was the circle slider, which was a simple ring that you just slid down a track. And then the course ended with the cargo net, which was the same boring cargo climb from ANW1. Out of the 30 runs here, 2 failed at the rope swing, 3 at the bridge of blades, which included Andrew Carson, 1 failed at the spider jump, which was Travis Rosen, whose rookie season ended here after he accidentally grabbed the top of the obstacle, again disqualifying himself. We had 1 fail at the jumping bars, and then as I stated, 12 fails at the salmon ladder. Out of these fails, 8 did not move on, and this 8 was a pretty strong group consisting of Chris Wilczewski, Ryan Stratus, who actually failed to jump to the salmon ladder, ANW finalist Sean Morris, Kane Sinclair, who made it to Japan last time, and top ANW1 qualifier William Spencer, who did end up in 17th place, but this would be his final appearance on the show. Then we got David Money and Trevor Vaughn, the top 2 from qualifying, who both failed here as well, where Trevor Vaughn made a major mistake by deciding that he was going to try to clear the course, and in that took his time through the first 6 obstacles. While he would have been moving on to the finals, even if he had a time 10 seconds slower than his qualifying time. And to round up the people that didn't make it to the finals, in 16th place, the person that was right on the edge was Lauren Ball. Now, the top 15 were the 4 remaining people that did fail the salmon ladder in Patrick Cusick, Brent Stephenson, Thomas Hall, and Shane Daniels. But Shane Daniels' fail being a massive surprise, as again, he was one of the top competitors from ANW1, and he ended up failing on the jump to the salmon ladder here. Brian Orozco moved on with an exhilarating run where he just barely made it through. He failed on the circle slider. He failed after making the transition. He made it to the salmon ladder without a good enough time to move on, so he needed to clear the salmon ladder to move on to the finals, and he barely made the transition to the circle slider, grabbing the ring and then instantly losing his grip. But again, that was enough to move on. Now that means 10 people did clear this course, with that 10 being Adam LaPlante, Dorian Cedars, Evan Dollard, Rich King, Ryan Cousins, David Campbell, Paul Casimir, Adam Truesdale, Levi Muehlberg, and Travis Furlonic, who had the fastest time of the day. But now it's time for the finals, and the finals here worked radically differently from last time, where last season we had 2 physically intensive challenges on the beach that led to some great competitors like David Campbell and Sean Morris being eliminated, despite these challenges having nothing to do with Ninja Warrior obstacles. In this tournament, they really rectified this by having the finals be a boot camp. The 15 competitors were sent to a remote mountain area in California to compete in teams on replicas of Sasuke obstacles. And this played out kind of similarly to your standard reality TV show. Here we got 3 teams of 5 that were picked by Schoolyard Pick through the 3 top times from semifinals in Travis Furlonic, Levi Muehlberg, and Adam Truesdale. Each round, the teams would participate in a pressure challenge, which would use a modified version of some sort of Sasuke obstacle, where one person from each team would compete. The worst performer would cause their team to do a punishment challenge, while the others got to train on the obstacles for the next challenge. And then we got a team relay, where the teams raced on an obstacle course consisting of harder versions of Sasuke obstacles, and obviously failing them would cause a time penalty, and a team that loses would have to send 2 people to the Heavenly Ropes, a side-by-side rope climb where the loser gets eliminated from the competition. Now, I personally like this format, but at the time there were a lot of people that really hated it, and I think there will be a lot of people that hate it today as well. And I completely understand why. Like, ANW and Sasuke has always been about merit, where someone moves on because of their sole performance. But with this format, there's opportunities for social dynamics to come into the game. And spoiler alert, it did. And that did cause a pretty big controversy at the time, but we'll talk about that a bit later. So the teams here were the Red Dragons, led by Travis Furlonic, consisting of David Campbell, Thomas Hall, Brent Stephenson, and Paul Casimir. The White Tigers were led by Levi Muehlberg and consisted of Adam LaPlante, Rich King, Ryan Cousins, and Shane Daniels. And then we got the Blue Monkeys, led by Adam Truesdale, consisting of Patrick Cusick, Brian Orozco, Evan Dollard, and Dorian Cedars. Right after the Schoolyard Pick, the White Tigers were looked at as like pretty much the all-star team. They had 3 finalists from ANW 1. It consisted of well-known freerunners, while the Blue Monkeys were looked at as the major underdogs, mostly consisting of new names with the exception of Brian Orozco. Now, these finals were 4 episodes long, so I am going to be skipping a lot of stuff here. I'm not going to really talk about the pressure challenges. They didn't really have much of an effect on the final result anyway. But anyway, let's get started with day 1, where the team relay consisted of the Cliffhanger and the Warped Wall. Each team had 2 fails here, with Thomas Hall, Ryan Cousins, and Brian Roscoe failing the Cliffhanger, and then Thomas Hall again, Adam LaPlante, and Dorian Cedars failing the Warped Wall, which meant all teams had the same amount of penalties. And despite Thomas Hall's failings, and also the Red Dragons losing the pressure challenge, they were able to actually come out on top here. The Blue Monkeys were able to come in second, leading to the White Tigers, again the presumed all-star team, losing the relay. And since Ryan Cousins and Adam LaPlante were the 2 to fail an obstacle, they were sent to the Heavenly Ropes, where Ryan Cousins was eliminated in the finals once again. Now, Ryan Cousins would continue to compete in ANW until ANW 4, but this is his last time going to the finals. Now for day 2, where the team relay consisted of the balance tank and the slider jump. Now, I should mention this here, if a team is missing a member, they must send one member of their own team to go twice. And unlike day 1, no one failed an obstacle on this course, but once again, the Red Dragons were easily able to win the round, while the White Tigers came in second, leading to the Blue Monkeys going to the Heavenly Ropes, where Patrick Cusick was chosen to go to the ropes due to a weak performance and also losing the pressure challenge, but they couldn't decide on the second person. Because of this, the Red Dragons, as the winner of the competition, were able to pick someone of their own. They picked Dorian Cedars, and on the Heavenly Ropes, neither could finish the obstacle, but Patrick Cusick made it further than Dorian Cedars, so Dorian Cedars was eliminated. Now, Cedars would continue to compete until ANW 6 and is still trying to get on the show as of ANW 10, but supposedly hasn't been called back. He did have a pretty memorable run in ANW 4 though. Now moving on to day 3, where the team relay consisted of the double salmon ladder and the warped wall. Now here, Thomas Hall and Adam LaPlante both failed on the salmon ladder, while Brent Stephenson, Adam Truesdale, and Rich King failed at the warped wall. Now, the Blue Monkeys, while they didn't have the fastest time, they did have the least amount of mistakes, which allowed them to win this round. And the White Tigers and the Red Dragons both had the same amount of penalties, but the White Tigers were able to do the course in a faster time, leading to the Red Dragons going to the Heavenly Ropes, which means that each team lost one member at the beginning of this game. Thomas Hall was the easy pick here, as he was easily the weakest competitor of the bunch, while the other person was a bit of a tougher decision, where it was either Brent for failing the wall or Travis for failing at the pressure challenge. And eventually Travis was selected, but he was easily able to beat Thomas, obviously eliminating him. Now Thomas Hall, again, would also compete for a while. He would compete until ANW 6 and had some success here and there, but he wouldn't compete ever since. And now we move on to day 4, the final day, which worked a bit differently than previous days. There was no pressure challenge, and then on the team relay, the winning team would be guaranteed a spot in the top 10, a spot in Japan, while the remaining 2 teams would have to pick 2 members each, and those 4 people would have to compete on the heavenly ropes, where the 2 slowest times would be eliminated, while the remaining would all go to Japan. So the team relay here consisted of the cliffhanger and the slider jump, and the Red Dragons completely blew everyone away, having no fails and having a time almost 2 minutes faster than the other teams. While the other teams both had 1 fail each, with Adam Truesdale and Adam LaPlante both failing the slider jump. So because those 2 failed, both of them were selected by their respective teams. However, the White Tigers also selected Rich King. Now, the Blue Monkeys part is where it gets a bit interesting. Obviously, all the Blue Monkeys' first pick was Patrick Cusick. He was clearly the weakest competitor left in the competition, but Patrick Cusick was a super fan of Ninja Warrior and really wanted to go to Japan, probably more than anyone else there. And obviously, he was scared that he wouldn't be able to do the ropes. Last time on the ropes, he was not on day 2, he was not able to clear it. So this is where all the controversy comes from that I mentioned earlier. Evan Dollard, who was the most consistent member of that team, never having any issues on any of the obstacles, was a really nice guy. And he decided, I'm going to sacrifice myself for Patrick Cusick. So what he ends up doing is that he allows Patrick Cusick to go straight to Japan while he sends himself to the ropes. Obviously, people hated this at the time. And I mean, I did too, to be honest. Again, I don't think Patrick really should have moved on. As we'll talk about in a little bit, he clearly would not have made it to Japan. And someone who had more ability would have definitely made it instead. But that being said, I did find this to be really compelling TV though. But yeah, so it was a showdown between Rich King, Adam LaPlante, Adam Truesdale, and Evan Dollard. And all of them were able to clear the heavenly ropes, but Adam Truesdale and Evan Dollard blew away the other 2, clearing in a much faster time, moving on to Japan, which eliminated Adam LaPlante and Rich King. Now, LaPlante we'll talk about later, but Rich King's season does end here, and this is pretty much the end of his American Ninja Warrior career as well. He did later compete in ANW 4, but failed in qualifying, and hasn't competed since. Now, he did actually technically come in 11th place, and he would have moved on if Patrick Cusick was selected for the ropes instead of Evan Dollard, so I do think that's a bit of a shame that he doesn't get to move on. But with that out of the way, the people going to Japan here are from the Red Dragons. We got David Campbell, who redeemed himself after the finals of ANW 1. We got Travis Furlanick for the 2nd time in a row, and we got the 2 newbies that would later become ANW legends in Brent Stephenson and Paul Casimir. From the White Tigers, only Levi Muhlenberg and Shane Daniels would be moving on, both of them for the 2nd time in a row. And then from the Blue Monkeys, we had Brian Orozco, also for the 2nd time in a row, along with 2 rookies in Evan Dollard and Patrick Cusick, and then Adam Truesdale, who redeemed himself after not even getting past qualifying in ANW 1. Now, in between filming of the finals and Sasuke 26, another G4 show was filming called Jump City Seattle, which was a free running competition that I might do a video on later on, as it's actually pretty important to ANW, as that show had some debuts of some current ANW legends like David Rodriguez and Drew Dreschel. But anyway, it was filming at the time, and Levi was a participant on it, and he ended up injuring himself during the filming of this, injuring his wrists, and this caused him to have to drop out of Sasuke 26. However, he was still flown out as a spectator and as moral support. However, because of this, Adam LaPlante was chosen as his replacement. Now, I don't know why Rich King wasn't selected. I have a feeling it was probably due to scheduling reasons. Again, Rich King was a professional stuntman, so I could see that being the case. But first, let's talk about Levi, who was the original, it guy of ANW. He was the Drew Dreschel of the time. He was the Brent Stephenson of the time. He was the guy. And sadly, this was pretty much his final run on the show. He did compete once more in ANW 4 and failed the first obstacle. Due to jet lag, mind you, but he did fail the first obstacle. And we never saw him again. And from what I understand, since then he's gotten married. He's running a farm in Michigan. So, there's that. Something else that I should mention here is that ANW 2's finale aired before Sasuke 26 aired. So I remember at the time being mind blown at the results, as for the most part, the Americans did very well. I was assuming the Japanese did the same thing, but then when watching Sasuke 26, we obviously learned that wasn't the case. So the course here was somewhat different from Sasuke 23's, where the first 3 obstacles were all brand new. First obstacle here was the step slider, which was your standard steps into a rope that slid to a platform. Then was the hazard swing, pretty much a simple swing that you swung to a platform. And then you got the big one. The big ninja killer of Sasuke 26 was the rolling escargot. But yeah, this was a really difficult obstacle, eliminating some really big names in Sasuke. And this obstacle was actually later used in ANW 6 in the qualifying round as the spinning wheel. Now after that was the same combo of the jumping spider, half pipe attack, and warped wall. But after that was another new obstacle in the giant swing, which consisted of a springboard that you jump off to grab a bar that swung over to a cargo net. And this was a pretty easy obstacle, only one person failed that the entire day, and then the course ends with the standard rope ladder. Alright, now for the runs. We started off with Animal Plant. He was the first to go, and he did pretty well actually. I mean, he cleared both the rolling escargot and the jumping spider, the 2 ninja killers of the day. However, he failed at the half-pipe attack. He lost his grip on the rope pretty much instantly and failed there. Now, Animal Plant did return for ANW 3, but didn't do so well, and he hasn't competed since. Patrick Cusick was the next to run, and didn't do so well. As I said before, he probably shouldn't have been there to begin with, and he did end up failing the rolling escargot pretty much instantly. Now, I say all this, but Cusick himself isn't a bad athlete. I just don't think he was well trained enough to be here at Sasuke 26. That being said, Cusick did continue to compete for a little while, having a very memorable run in ANW 3, and actually making it to the finals of ANW 4, though he was never really spotlighted in the show ever again. And now we got Paul Casimir, and this is where he starts to make a name for himself. He was able to clear stage 1, mind you with less than a second on the clock, but he was able to become the first clear of the day and the first of many Americans. Now he was followed by Adam Truesdale, who had a solid run throughout, though not super quick. However, after failing his first try on the wall, he started the rush. And you know when I mentioned only one person failed the giant swing? Yeah, that guy was Adam Truesdale. Again, he was really rushing, he was running out of time, and on this transition from the swing to the net, he just completely missed the net. Adam Truesdale would compete until ANW 4, but again, never had the same amount of success. Evan Dollard was next, and sadly, like Patrick Cusick, he failed on the rolling escargot, being tied with Cusick as the worst performance for the Americans here. And I remember at the time, a lot of people were saying that this was a curse for letting Cusick get to Japan. But anyways, Dollard would become a staple in ANW, competing until ANW 7, though he did have pretty mixed results along the way. The second newbie to run was Brent Stephenson, who, like Casimir, cleared the course pretty easily, being the second clear of the day. The final 4 to run were the 4 returning competitors, with Travis Furlonic running first and him redeeming himself after last time by clearing the harder version of the jumping spire. He did have some trouble with the rolling escargot, though he was able to jump from pretty much the halfway point all the way to the platform, and he was able to clear with 14 seconds on the clock, being one of the top times of the day. After that was Shane Daniels, who sadly repeated history here, where he had a lot of trouble with the jumping spider. His feet just wouldn't stick to the walls. He had some trouble there that slowed him down, and he was able to make it to the final obstacle with more time than he did last time, but once again he timed out, this time so close to the buzzer. Sadly, this would be Shane's last trip to the finals, even though he did compete until ANW 5. The remaining 2 competitors were David Campbell and Brian Orozco, who both easily cleared the course with over 20 seconds left on the clock, with both of them being the 2 fastest times of the day. And this also marks David Campbell's first stage 1 clear after timing out in Sasuke 22. And with that, that means 5 out of the 10 Americans did clear stage 1, with them also being 5 out of the total 10 clears for that entire day in Sasuke 26. Now for stage 2, which did change a bit from Sasuke 23, we start off with the slider drop, again, a simple bar, and there's a big drop and you just have to avoid it derailing. And then we had the double salmon ladder, followed directly by the unstable bridge, which contrasts from the Sasuke 23 version, where there was only one salmon ladder, and then there was a rest period between that and the unstable bridge. And then we got the balance tank, which was a pretty classic Sasuke obstacle, which made a return. And then we finished the course with the metal spin and the wall lift, just like last time. So stage 2 is pretty easy for the Americans, where Paul, Brent, David, and Brian Orozco all cleared pretty easily, with Brent and David having over 20 seconds on the clock. However, Travis surprisingly failed on the balance tank. He tried to use a technique that everyone was using at boot camp, where he would push the balance tank a bit forward first. However, due to the balance tank being a bit lighter than the boot camp version, this really caught him off guard, and he ended up tripping up here. Travis would continue to compete until ANW 4 and had a really strong run in ANW 3 as well. The 4 that cleared here were 4 out of only 6 that made it to stage 3 in Sasuke 26, making this tournament completely dominated by the foreigners. And now for stage 3, which was radically modified from ANW 1, the course started off with the roulette cylinder and the doorknob grasper back to back, which was a pretty difficult combo, especially for the Americans who tend to be a bit heavier than their Japanese counterparts. The cycle road was next, and it was really easy and never made a Sasuke appearance ever again, though it did appear on ANW. And then we got the ultimate cliffhanger, which was at the time undefeated, and spoiler alert, stayed that way. But this is a ridiculous obstacle, and it became a staple of ANW afterwards, and a modified version of this obstacle is still there to this day, as of ANW 10. So, Paul Casimir was the first to run, and he was able to clear the roulette cylinder, though he did eventually lose his grip on the second doorknob of the doorknob grasper. Paul would obviously continue to compete until ANW 7, being one of the most consistent competitors on the show, but supposedly hasn't been called back since. Though there's some disputes on whether he hasn't been called back or whether he didn't even apply. Brent Stephenson was the next to run and got further than Casimir by clearing the doorknob grasper and cycle road, and made it to the third ledge of the ultimate cliffhanger, which at the time was the furthest anyone had ever gotten to that point, though that is because the obstacle was made easier from the previous tournament. But Brett did lose his grip before attempting to transition from the third to fourth ledges, and like Casimir, Brent would obviously become an ANW legend, especially after ANW 4, and he still competes to this day as of ANW 10. Then we got David Campbell, who like Brent Stephenson made it to the ultimate cliffhanger and attempted to transition between the third and fourth ledges. But like Levi in ANW 1, he didn't leave enough space for his second hand, causing him to slip on the transition. Spoiler alert, he was the furthest out of all the Americans, and obviously David Campbell is still competing in ANW as of right now, being one of only 4 people to compete in every single season. And then we're down to Brian Orozco, the last man standing, who, as I stated before, did fail the doorknob grasper in Sasuke 25, and surprisingly, he failed even earlier this time. He'd even make it to the doorknob grasper. He lost his grip at the very end of the roulette cylinder. And this would sadly be his final Sasuke appearance. He would compete in the next 4 ANWs, but would never make it this far ever again. And that's the end of the tournament. The tournament ended with David Campbell's performance on the ultimate cliffhanger being the best performance of the tournament. While in Sasuke 26, there were 2 other competitors, both of them doing better than David Campbell's run, but that's for a different video. So there we go. That's the end of American Ninja Warrior 2, which was a fun season at the time, and it really showed that the American competitors could hold their own in Sasuke, as this was a tournament completely dominated by the foreigners. And like ANW 1, this is a season that's really nostalgic to me, so it was fun to look back on this season. So I do think I will do a similar video to this for ANW 3, which is probably the best season out of these earlier seasons, and that will wrap up all of these earlier seasons before the rebrand that happened in ANW 4. But yeah, that's the video. That's everything I have to say about American Ninja Warrior Season 2. Thank you for watching.